All right, Job, here's what I got for you today. We are about to meet Krissy. She's the CEO of Blueprint, which is a company that does tech sales recruiting. The interesting play is they started out saying we can build the same blueprinted infrastructure that Keep Trucking did. Keep Trucking was the fastest growing SaaS company to date, although now I think OpenAI has probably passed them, but they did $0 to $60 million in the first year that Krissy and Chuck were doing the sales team there. So she's going to share with us some sales war stories and also teach us a little bit about her own content journey as a CEO. She's about 5 years into running Blueprint. They got a cool podcast. I was just on it. We'll put links in there. But yeah, Krissy is somebody that I've known now for many years because one of my first executive coaching engagements was with the leadership team at Keep Trucking as they tried to go from, hey, we figured out the first 50 million. How do we get to the next 100 million? And that's where we met. So we're about to have a great conversation with somebody who has amazing sales background, but also isn't afraid to just show up. And she's going to tell some stories about her experiences on LinkedIn and trying to build content and also hopefully teach us how to start a podcast. I want to talk about your CEO journey and how that overlaps with like deciding how you show up, deciding what you share, and like your own podcast, right? You've got a lot to teach us about like how to do a podcast and what's going on. So we should talk about your background and hear a little bit about who you are and how do you want people to know you?
How do I want people to know me? I am a businesswoman, a wife, a mother, a friend, a sister who works every day as hard as I can to genuinely show up for my people and give it my all, right? Which might sound a little corny, but I am the one telling myself how I can show up and no one's limiting me because of what maybe norms or society have said. I have been in the business world now for almost 17 years. I started off in sales and kind of propelled my way through tech into becoming a tech leader, SaaS orgs, multiple different industries. And then I got into entrepreneurship and starting my own firm kind of accidentally. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I'd started at a company called Keep Truckin', or formerly Keep Truckin', now it's called Motive. And I pitched them. I said, hey, you need more women, but also, why are you building everything in San Francisco? We should build in Nashville. The Southeast has great talent. I'm happy to take on that, charge. And so the CEO and other co-founder and VP of sales, who's now my co-founder, said yes. And we went from a little under $500,000 in revenue to $60 million in a year. And we hired 100 people in the Nashville office. And so even though I wasn't the owner of the company and I was managing the North American sales team, I ran the Nashville office. And I did all of that hiring without really using any type of recruiting help. And I got to be a GM. So it kind of opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. And I thought, wow, if this is what I can do when I'm empowered, what can I do when the reins are fully off? And so I thought, why don't we go give that journey to other companies that are, at the time before COVID, right? Companies were still only hiring in, San Francisco or somewhere in California, the West Coast. That was what was believed to be true SaaS tech talent. And so our goal in starting Blueprint originally was to help them move into the Southeast and kind of be a GM in a box. And that didn't really pan out as well as it maybe could have, because we started in January 2020, which is an awful time to start a business. Long story short, we had one client sign up at the end of 2020 and under the premise of the previous model, and they said, no, we just want recruiting. And I was like, well, we're not a recruiting company.
Not yet.
Beggars can't be choosers. We ended up doing it. It just took off, right? And it was something I never wanted to do. But I share all that of like a background, which is a little bit long, but everything I've ever done has been very strategic and not ego driven. And, I did all of these things while I was pregnant with both of my children, right? So I think for women, it's important to hear you can do whatever you want to do, right? Whatever you are actually capable of. And that's something that, I wasn't hearing as much. So it also drove me to try these things while being a mom as well.
When we talk to women who are successful, we say, how do you do it all and be a mom? But you just brought that story to the front of your background and like, this is me. This is like, this overlaps. There's no start and stop. And what a rich background that you're now kind of sharing with clients.
It's been one heck of a journey. But I think to your point, what I'll always say is you can have it all, but you can't do it all. And what all is different for everyone. So it makes me so annoyed and mad when I hear people tell women, because you never hear this, you can't have it all, or you can have it all, but not all at once. And I understand what they're saying, but I think no one is saying this to men, right? And I'm like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't have? I know my limits. I know my capabilities. And my all, like, I do have it all right now, right? That doesn't mean perfect. But the things that I want, I have. And there are moments that I don't have everything, right? But I can't do it all, which I think is a very big difference versus having it all. So
Yeah. And even when men talk to each other, what I hear is kind of a have it all talk track.
yeah.
Oh, dude, you can make that work. You could do that, or you could take on this. And I don't hear that from women. I hear that it'll be okay. Just do this for now.
Yes. hmm
Like I hear small talk, and I don't know if that's fair. Is that what you hear too from other women, or do you surround yourself with the let's go and have it all, or choose what we want to do it all?
I mean, I think I surround myself with a lot of really strong women
Yeah.
who do say that. I wish I heard it more, but I also realize like I'm just going to have to go and say this and as I see it and prove it out and make sure that at least one person is saying it consistently, even if it's really annoying, because I'm always saying it, but because I wanted to hear that when I was kind of in those situations, right? I talk a lot about how when I was running that office in Nashville, before I started Blueprint and I was pregnant, I could tell a lot of people looked at me and like, you've peaked. You're going to have a kid now, right? And so what you've done go as far, right? Like it's incredible, but like you're going to have a slow period. And I think life is not so linear that like, oh, I'm having success, so that means it will just keep doing that. That happens with everybody. But I think for women, it's like hyper focused more as if like this has to be your journey, right? And so when you take a step back or something slows down, it's because of being a parent or it's because you're a woman who chose X, Y, and Z, not because this is how life works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy because Job and I met years and years ago in San Francisco where we worked at a company that went 0 to 300 million over the 5 years we were there. And so we got different tastes of that journey. The team that I got a chance to run was where Job and I met, which went 0 to 58 million in 22 months. And so it was just absolute nuts. Not as nuts as your journey at KT, by the way. You and Chuck still have the spot in the trophy room, right? But it kind of took off. And one of our company values was to be around just awesome people that would go and create an amazing network because we knew we had lightning in the bottle. We knew it wasn't going to last forever. The fun success stories was one of the product marketing or product leaders that we had went off to go do big things. And I just saw her last week. And when I asked her how she was, she goes, I don't know the answer to that question because for the last 2 years, I've either been pregnant or postpartum. And I'm putting you on blast, Joe, because I'm talking about Kelly.
That's my wife.
Essentially, you said, I don't know what normal is because this has been a 3-year block. And Kelly's this amazing product professional who's out there doing big things at HubSpot and other places. And it's like, but that's been part of the journey, kind of weaved in there. And I think about my wife, Jenny, trying to invent her career while she's been in and out of these really big physical cycles, which also have an emotional cycle. And also she's got so much to offer the places that she's worked and the things that she's done. What do you tell folks who are like Job and I that have career women they want to support both at home and at the office?
That's a great question. I mean, look, it would be disingenuous or incorrect for me to say it's not hard, right? What is important, I think, to be telling them, because they're not going to hear it as much as they should, is that you can do this. You can do hard things, right? And then what can I help with? What is that silent load that I can help with? I've done that with my husband before where I'm like, I am overwhelmed. I have so much going on, even, past being pregnant and having newborns and postpartum. And I'm like, it's too much. And one of the good things I give him a lot of credit for is like, well, what do you need? Like, write it down for me. And that used to annoy me because I'm like, why do I have to write it down for you? But I'm like, well, look, sometimes if that's how you're going to get help, that's how you're going to get help. Right. So, force that conversation. Because I think for women, sometimes we're so used to going, you know what, if there's a mistake with it, I'll just do it because then I have to do the work again. And so I think what can be helpful to your partner or to someone that, you're supporting, even if, you're a woman just supporting a friend, is being intentional with what can I help with? And then I want to make sure I do it the way you do it. So that way you can actually have that reprieve and trust. And I will actually help keep doing these things. I'll remember this like I do with work and improve. And I'll, keep helping with these things in the future.
Oh, this is just very relevant for my life right now, where we have a 21-month-old, 22-month-old now as of today, and a newborn that's like 5 weeks old.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. And like my wife is an incredible cook, and I am a terrible cook. But it's like I need to try to take some of that, because that is a lot of work every day. And it's a little bit of a struggle, or like the way you just said it, like I need to raise my standard to get closer to where I'm never going to reach her level, but I need to get it up somewhere close so that like I can do this to a level that at least you like and I like and is healthy. It's challenging because you have to
Yeah.
remember, and you have to I have to change my own behavior, and that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I think one thing I would add to that is because I was thinking about this. Again, this isn't a blanket statement for all men, but I think just in the culture we grow up with, we know men are taught not to really show their emotions. I think we're getting better with that now. By not showing emotion or being able to really tap into that, you're not allowed to be vulnerable, which means you're not allowed to really make mistakes, right? Women are taught you have to do everything in order to just be average, or you have to overachieve. If you don't overachieve and do all of these things, you become irrelevant. And so there's this huge dynamic shift where, and I remember actually having, again, this, he would be okay with me saying this, having this conversation with my husband, probably about a year ago, where I said, you're a great dad, you're a great provider, you're a great friend and a great husband, but I need more, right? And that's not because you're bad at any of those things, and separating that out, which I think is where that conversation can feel so contentious, because then the man can feel like, or whoever your partner is, right, can feel like I'm not enough or I'm doing the wrong things, which is not what the woman is often saying. It's just, no, like, I need you to take on these things that I just know how to do and how to stand up naturally, because that's just what I was taught, right? And so it's like finding that way to weave that in for the disconnect.
That's great. How does that happen at work?
Professionally, to your question, Ryan, so I'll tell you one thing I did when I had my daughter, my first child. And so when I came back to work, as an example, I put on my calendar for everyone to see breastfeeding or pumping on my schedule. And then I let all of the leaders know, hey, I have this on my calendar, and if you book a meeting over it with me on it, I just want you to know I will not be able to attend. So I know that don't book everything around me if it's not relevant, but just so you know, if I don't pump at this time or I don't breastfeed, I'll lose my milk supply. So I actually use that to educate them a little bit, because feeding babies, whether you breastfeed or not, is like honestly one of the most challenging things. And just to try to like help them understand that. And so I had no issues with people doing that. And what I would say professionally is it would be wonderful. And it is. And when it happens, it's great. If people come to you and say, let us help you to transition back into the office, in a lot of cases, unfortunately still, that support is not always there. So if you don't have it, don't be afraid to put it out there. And you can do that in a way that's not combative, that's not talking down to people or coming across like you're not working hard. So give people like a time window and understanding what those things look like and the why behind it. And I think that really helps people kind of, empower them to help you versus waiting for them to help you on something that they're not experienced with or just may not understand. Because we have a huge empathy problem in our country, or maybe even culturally. Empathy comes from learning, because a lot of folks can't go through the same experiences.
I think as you become more mature and recognize that kids are this huge part of your life, especially if you're a woman, a professional woman, you're a bit more open to the empathy piece that you mentioned, Krissy, and open to learning.
And so you used your come back to work as a way to educate the people around you.
Yeah.
That's obviously comes with the risk and comes with some choices. Tell me about some of those choices that you make in terms of the content you share, because you've also shared some really personal stuff as you've built up your public persona as a CEO. It seems like you're leading the way there too. How do you decide what you want to tell people and what you don't?
So I have this saying that I probably heard 15 years ago, and it's just stuck with me. And it's like kind of my guiding light, North Star. And it's, do you want to make a point or do you want to make a difference? And so anything that I say, I always steer towards making a difference, right? Because making a point, while it can be the same truth, it will not move the needle. It can make people put their feet in the sand, and it doesn't do anything. And so that's honestly what I use as simple as that. Is it true and genuine to who I am and who I feel? And I think everyone wants that genuineness. So I think those two things really help guide me for what I share.
I love it, Krissy. I want to pull on that thread a little bit because you mentioned something at the beginning that you were strategic and not ego driven. And it seems like this is a very good example of it's not strategic to make a point. That's ego driven to make your ego feel good. Oh, I'm right. Which is a classic relationship dynamic we all face of like, well, do you want to be I'm right to your partner? No, I'm right.
God, it's exhausting for me because of how, because I'm usually right. It's just it's so hard.
I've been right once in 10 years, Krissy. My partner's
Right
very,
answer.
very sharp and she remembers everything. But the thing I want to pull in on is like, how did you cultivate this strategic mindset in your head to be like much more detached, non-ego driven? I mean, I think you're probably just a wonderful person, but I want, for my own sake, I need to know there's a skill somewhere that I can learn to help be more like that. So did you have any experience?
Well, one, I think when you are not ego driven and you are genuine, you get a lot of reward from that versus the other way can be short term reward, right? So I think I would say the skill is being able to observe because you see what those outcomes actually look like and how powerful they are. But yeah, that's kind of my view on that, right? There's so much happiness and joy and inspiration, empowerment when you are, authentic and genuine and ego adverse in what you do. And not to say it's, always perfect, right? But it has a lot more reward at the end of the day.
Oh, I love your word choice. Observant is a really good word because it kind of detaches you a little bit. And you're like, you're almost like a curious scientist at this point, observing, and you're more open now to maybe seeing something that you couldn't before. So thank you. I really loved your quote and I'm going to start using that observant more. Try to be observant. What's happening?
Yeah. No, for sure.
One thing I've observed back to content, Krissy, is that when you started the company, it's felt like you were just also trying to figure out what you were going to do content wise. I'd see a couple of posts. I'd see maybe you and Chuck post something. You started YouTube series. You kind of did a couple of interviews, or I guess it started with more like the company meetings that you were recording and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
those are all choices too, right? So now to where you're at today in the content journey, I'm curious to know kind of what's the difference from when you started, because that's also choosing how you show up, right? You're choosing how the company shows up, choosing how you show up. Was that a challenge for you? And how did you deal with it?
I've been way better at writing than I am just speaking off the cuff, unless I'm really, really prepared for, specifics. And so, but with that, when I started writing, and maybe talking about things that were a little bit more controversial or vulnerable, I could almost be a little bit of a perfectionist. And so I'm like, I don't want to put it out there unless it's just going to be game changer, right?
How much pressure was that?
I don't even know if it was like pressure. It would just take me forever to write something. I've always looked at it as this is my personal brand, which is Blueprint, but it is also Krissy. Like that will live on through Blueprint, past Blueprint, before Blueprint, right? So I think I would always try to just really, I want to be impactful. I want to say it the right way. I want it to be sharp. And so I would just take one. This is obviously before ChatGPT, which is very helpful today in kind of helping, use my own original writings and just get to that editing piece that would have taken me longer previously. It's just authentic and it's me. And if it provides value, even if only 15 people like it, which we all know likes are not how you should always judge things, right? Again, if I really go back to my core principle of making a point or making a difference, if I'm making a difference for someone who sees that, that needs to be good enough.
You know that you're sharing something personal. Do you have the same perfectionism that happens? How do you know that you're okay to share something without it making it harder or worse for you? I mean, Tennessee is a place that likes a lot of guns. That's kind of a national reputation, and you're speaking against that. So you've got a political layer, you've got a personal layer, you've got a layer as a mom where you witness these kids to be involved in something awful. Like, how do you know that one, you're okay to share, and two, how do you hit post on that? That would really scare me to hit post on that.
The day after the shooting, I cannot describe to you like the pressure on my chest. And just how I felt very disconnected from my kids and I almost felt like numb. What I didn't know at the time was that was just the beginning cycle of what I would later find out I was being diagnosed with PTSD from that day. I remember like the thing for that first post 2 years ago was I was like, I have to write about this. It was the only way that I could get that pressure off my chest. Again, it goes back to not to be on repeat, but I need to say something because I think LinkedIn is a place where people go, don't do politics. It's professional, all of this stuff, right? And I always go, if you read how I write them, they're not set up to bash one side or the other in making a difference, but bringing light to it. And, we talk a lot about how are you making the world a better place through the climate and being sustainable, but we don't always talk about how we need to be involved in our communities. There's a saying that you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. And I think when you have an entire community that doesn't share anything outside of one viewpoint, do you know how hard that is to change your entire belief system as an adult and learn those different things? And so I felt it was so important because I got involved with a group that's called Voices for Safer Tennessee. One, I think working in that group not only helped with my trauma, but it taught me about being an advocate. And when I learned the information of where we rank in the country nationally for shootings and what was going on with shootings at schools, right? And how laws specifically were impacting that. It showed me that as I observed and had conversations with people who viewed things differently, one, we are all more united than we realize. And two, these things can be undone. They will take time. You would be surprised how many people actually like, no, I want change with this. I want change with these things. As extreme on the right as you could get, and vice versa. And I think what I wanted to show when we stop believing it is when we get the power back. And so that's what I kind of wanted to share through these messages is to go, this is my home. I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm going to stand up and fight for it. If you look at history and all those things, it just took a small group of people to change the way that we do everything, right? And so if people aren't speaking about it and I see these facts, I need to be the one that talks about it. Last thing I would say on this, I wasn't at the school. I was at the doctor's kind of, just slightly down the street. And it had that type of impact on me. And I know it had it on hundreds of people that were in that same area that we were in that felt very much like a war zone. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. And if it has that much of an impact, right, being that disconnected from something, having no relation, I realize like it's not just 6 people that died. It's not just the 200 kids and their families that are forever changed in there. You're changing thousands of lives just because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Part of it's like, hey, can we try to work on this? Because it's not if it will affect you, it's when, based on the trajectory of where these things are going. So again, it's about educating and making a difference. And if I really believe it's the right thing, I'm going to stand up and talk about it and not be afraid of what I feel is valuable and authentic. And I think, the audience that has read that has nicely confirmed that for me. I don't do it for the likes. I do it because I think it's right. Again, I think there's a way to use your voice to make a difference, because I could most certainly make a point in that conversation. And I think then it would probably not be as productive. And my goal is to be productive and not try to divide us any more than we already are as a country.
It's a shame that sticking up for kids to be safe at school is political at all.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I would love to think our baseline is set somewhere different than it is, but it is set to think that school safety is a political issue. Shouldn't be. Women being able to take care of what their family needs in terms of like having room to nurse and pump shouldn't be something that has to be advocated for. It should be kind of baked in to the culture or to the company. And it's amazing that you're willing to go out and do that education, because for so many, and I'm talking about myself here, there are a lot of things that I don't talk about in public because I do have a lot of fear of retaliation, or I do have a lot of fear that I'm going to close a door to a relationship that I want to have. I do a lot of volunteer efforts with veterans. The population that I have served as a coach are very much different political spectrum than where me and my family are. And I've had people actually say like, oh yeah, well, we'd probably agree on this if you didn't live on the left coast, things like that.
Yeah,
It's like,
sure.
well, all right, cool. I'm glad that I can be useful, but we are so divided politically that like there are many things that shouldn't be political issues, but I worry about closing doors to being able to help more people or being able to do business. And you've just said, hey, look, I'm taking a stand on some of this stuff, whether it's political or whether it's, gender equality. I think that shows a lot of courage, but you're telling us it's not courage so much as that's your default.
It's one of those things like if you look at all my stuff, for the most part, I don't think I attack anybody. That's never my goal. If I attack anyone, it's like corporations, right, at a high level, right? And so
Yeah.
I don't know that that's a
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
in that sense, like, of what they're doing, right? But I think when you don't attack, it sounds simple, but it's like incredible the message that can get across, right? I was actually going and speaking in people's homes called gatherings for this organization and putting, to talk about what's going on with gun violence, which is something that you can't even say when you talk to senators, right? There were some senators and reps that I would meet with, and like you have to use different words and be educated on how to talk to them to have that conversation, which sounds crazy. But I think dealing with politicians and dealing with people is very different. And what I've just been so encouraged by is when you have those conversations with people, you will be surprised at how open they are. But when it comes to posting, that's not a personal conversation. So that can maybe come across a little bit differently. But I think when you invite people into a conversation and into your viewpoint and your thoughts respectfully, you genuinely will get respect back. I did a gathering in my home last March and I put it in my neighborhood post. And I remember being so nervous about it because my assumption based on where I live in particular is that there's a lot of people that might be upset about that. And I was floored at how many responses I got, like reaching out to me one-on-one, Krissy, I'm so glad you're doing this. And what I found was people are often looking for that leadership because they're scared to stand up. And it's so refreshing to see someone else do that, but in a way that's respectful. And that makes them feel comfortable joining that conversation. And I think that's part of what was missing a little bit in Tennessee before is we either have people that don't say anything or the people that are screaming. And you need the people that scream. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Like you need those people, but you also need the people that will have those conversations and that are really productive and try to build those relationships with people that they don't like or people that they disagree with. And that's where you really start to find that common ground. And I think when you start to see that, you're like, I've got to share this with people because this is what is real. Not the algorithm that we're all trapped in based on what we see on our phones and everything. That's not real, but it is. People talk about technology taking over humans. Breaking news, it's already happened in so many ways. Like we're already being controlled by the content that it's constantly pushed our way, right? And so this is my way of trying to like break that algorithm and say, no, like I want to be a part of this conversation that is real when you talk to people and not just look at a phone or a TV.
Yeah. That's great. I heard an interview yesterday or maybe 2 days ago with the CEO of Patreon, and he said that the idea of a subscriber is dying and almost dead because the way that we've TikTokified all the algorithms on all the social platforms, LinkedIn included, it leads people to make content for the algorithm or make content for that first touch that like need to go viral, as opposed to the long game like you're playing of let me speak to my values, let me share them so people can get to know me. Let me stand up for the things that are right. And I've got to think that at some point that pendulum swings back and maybe it never comes back to, I want to subscribe so that I hear Krissy's views. We got to trust that the algorithms get good enough to say, okay, I want somebody to have a great user experience as opposed to have increased time on site so that I can sell more ads.
Yep.
And I think that's tough. And I don't know if we're ever going to get there to that point. My pendulum has swung a little bit in that, when we started Anteater, I said, hey, we're going to be an antiviral agency. But I think that there's a lot of people who don't understand that. And they don't get that idea of let's build great content regardless of virality because you do want your content seen.
Yeah. I do not think people understand how much, and I'll just speak to our country in particular, but you could apply this to the whole world. People are craving authenticity and genuine folks more than they ever have because the truth is harder than ever to find. Fiction is cheap. And so there's so many things that are fiction or inauthentic or just for the viral, views or whatever it is. And you're starting to see some of the consequences of that, right? So you're probably going to laugh when I give this example, but I know any woman watching this is probably going to understand. So Bravo is a very popular channel that's done very well with Real Housewives Network. That's where they got their thing on. And Real Housewives took off originally because it was very authentic. Crazy, but authentic. Now, one of the challenges that they're having with, trying to bring on new cast members or do things is that they're not authentic. They're trying to play to the story because of all the social media aspects. And so you're already seeing where when you're not genuine and authentic to who you are, it's not working with things that have been machines in the past. And so I know that's might be like a silly example, but it's one just from a media perspective of seeing like, hey, for reality shows and things of that nature, if they're too fake at this point or they're not real and people are wanting real, right? What I'd encourage anyone to do is, again, be your genuine self, make a difference. You will be surprised, like overwhelmed at how positive of a reaction you'll get.
That is a great final thought. I was thinking, like, how can I ask the best final question? But you gave the best final answer, so I'm going to leave it there, because if we all master that, there's a lot of things that work out on their own, which is really cool. So thank you for doing this for us and for the folks who watch, to be a little more educated, but also inspired to be personal and share what's going on for them.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed being on here, and I hope, someone at the very least got empowered or inspired to, be their authentic selves, be vulnerable. The world and universe will reward you for it, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Krissy.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Krissy. You're wonderful.
Thanks. I think the same of y'all. So.